Hi, guys. Welcome back to Matcha Talk Podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest. She is NR label designer. She's a local designer in San Francisco.
Please
All
welcome
right.
Anthony Roger.
Woohoo!
Hello.
Woo!
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. Welcome to our podcast. We're so excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
She has her matcha drink.
Yes.
I'm covering the obvious product placement because
Before we start with questions, would you like to tell us what is your go-to matcha drink?
I'm super plain and simple. I mean, plain and simple for the most part. I very much am the oat milk matcha iced on a cold day, iced on a hot day. And it's my daily go-to.
Just like Liam, oat milk.
Yeah, oat milk.
Oh yeah. Did you know that that matcha is a diuretic? I didn't know that. Anywho, continue on.
It is, and any caffeine product out there is similar as well.
Yeah.
We heard of our label, and it's becoming like bigger and bigger in social media.
Mhm.
And we wanted to know about you as a designer. Where are you from? What city are you from?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in a lot of my TikTok videos, I go, "Hi everyone, my name's Anthony. I'm the designer of And Hour." I feel like that's just it's my like thing I say all the time in all these videos. But I'm the designer of And Hour. I make queer clothing that makes people feel romance, pleasure, and play, or evokes the idea of romance, pleasure, and play. And the label is inspired by my upbringing of moving to a big city and discovering my gender identity through clothing. And I am originally from Washington State, which is like a really like semi-liberal, semi-conservative state, depending on what side of the state you're on. I was on the more conservative side of the state. And then I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area when I was 18, and I've been here ever since. And it's just been now almost 13 years.
It must be really like liberating and breath of fresh air coming into a different scene of people. And
Yeah, I think honestly for me it was a little bit of like there was so much creature comfort in my hometown, and like I never really went through anything truly traumatic being in my hometown or in high school. Like I'm a very personable person, and I can make friends very easily, and I was never the target of any particularly LGBT or hate in the high school
oh wow.
But I think when I moved here, though, it was definitely like it was a breath of fresh air in the way that was like, oh, I need to get on these people's levels because I look like podunk whodunit. I looked very like, oh, this person is from a small town.
When people from smaller town move to the bigger town, people can tell. Sometimes from like how the way you talk, how the way you dress, they kind of know that like it must be from out of town.
Yeah, 100%. I think the people who are from, well, especially like a lot of the people that I lived in the dorms with, and when I was 18, they were all from like California, LA, they were from Las Vegas, they were from New York, they were from even bigger cities or like from Miami. So they all had like this edge about them that I think I craved coming from like a super small town in southeastern Washington. I craved that like level of LGBT acceptance where people were dressing in the way they want. They were dressing punk. They were dressing really avant-garde, and I mean, it kind of funnily avant-garde for 18-year-olds, but nonetheless, still tried to fit in.
Yeah, seem like they're more expressive to be who they are, and you're like, I can do this.
I can try that. I can go to an Urban Outfitters and find some stuff. I mean, go to an Urban Outfitters and steal some stuff, essentially.
I think we all did in some point in our life.
Sorry, Aaron.
I have a question. So, like, how did it all started in our label? Because when I was like searching to social media, I sent this immediately to Net, my co-host, and I said, "Oh my gosh, we want her to be in our show," and it's so inspiring to have like the diversity of models you have in your brand, of sizes, colors, and all of this amazing people in there. How did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, I mean, so for some background, I graduated from college with a degree in photography. So I was working like on a lot of like e-commerce sets. So I was working at Williams Sonoma. I've worked at the Gap. I've worked at JanSport. I've worked at all these different places. Athleta. Just a lot of places where they make art for commerce.
Yeah.
And just kind of being in the wheel well of, oh, this photo will help sell this, crock pot, or whatever. This shot will help sell, this ladle, whatever.
Does it come like with stories and stuff with those photographies?
It's one of those things where once you graduate, like you kind of have to find a job, and like the jobs are not entirely the most like inspiring because it's just like you're selling stuff to people and it's not like doing editorial. For me, I thought, oh, like I'll make money from doing like really gorgeous editorials. It's like, no, you make a lot of money from doing like 2 weeks at a studio in Brisbane, California, where you're working, from 8:30 to 5:30 every day, color matching like plots. So did that, and then the panorama happened, as we all know. And basically I lost all those jobs because a lot of those studios, they won't let you work from home because they want all their proprietary information in their studios. They don't want anyone working or taking it from home. I think that's changed now because I think the worker has uprised enough to like, we can work from home anywhere, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I lost my job and I just got on unemployment, and I was like, well, I have all this time. I have some security with this unemployment, with this enhanced benefit. And I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I really couldn't do photography in my tiny apartment, especially people photography. That's what I was really into. And so I honestly was just like, the way, and this is working up to the end hour story. This is working up. Basically, I'm an avid YouTube watcher, and one of the things that popped up, a sewing YouTuber called With Wendy, and she is based out of Toronto, Canada. And she just does like really great like recreations and inspirations of like other like indie brands, your Palais and so many more. Lear Kamitoshi, like things brands I really enjoyed just wholesale. And basically I was like, oh, well, she was teaching me how to sew. She's teaching us how to sew. Like, I thought that could be interesting. I do enjoy like fashion in that way as well. And so basically it was either teach myself the hobby or kill myself. And so, I had to make it.
So sorry.
No, it's fine.
Because we all get so much time.
Yeah. So much time at home, and like, it just was a perfect symphony of like, okay, let's teach myself how to do this thing and just practice day in and day out and just trying to make stuff and finding fabric at Goodwill and just, putting things together was just kind of like fun of it. And then I took it more seriously when I got accepted into this business incubator called Business Class by Sophia Amoruso. I got accepted as like an LGBT recipient. And basically it also gave me the like space to think about starting a business in the way that I like was going to be meant for me. I knew I didn't want to go back to photo retouching or being in the studios, being a digital tech. I didn't want to go back to that kind
just wanted to expand yourself to different horizons, technically.
Yeah, and also it's like, you get paid a lot of money, but it's just not fulfilling in any capacity. Like, you're working for the man. And I like working for the they thems. But no, so basically went through the class, kind of developed the brand, and I just kind of put two and two together. My love for queer people and my love for what I do with creating garments and what garments meant to me, and that's kind of how And Our basically started there. I wish it was more like aha epiphany moments, like even how I came up with the name. The name literally was not like any sort of aha. It was me in the shower and I was thinking of names for it. And I was like, oh, And Our. Just putting like little things together, putting other little names together.
Interesting. Did you see like how much like the designers here in San Francisco, there's like a little of unisex brand or non-labeled brand out there, and yours itself, it kind of stands out to me how you came up with the idea of having diversity in your brand. Like how the sizes are. I don't know. I spoke to you this in person as well. How I love the sizing. It made me feel included as a person, and included, and not like a Kate Moss. I wish I was a Kate Moss size.
It don't have to be, because that's hyper realistic of anyone.
Yeah, but
But
I love how you're one of those brand out there, like fighting this mold that we don't have to be in this thing.
yeah, well, the thing is, I appreciate the sentiment too. It's very sweet. I think my biggest battle, of course, is sizing, in the way that there are certain garments that I make that can't go above a large, because so we'll get into it. We'll talk more about like the actual nitty gritty of making things, because it's way more complicated. I think we all are on TikTok, and when you go and see a brand and you go in the comments and someone's like, "Well, you don't make it in a 6X, so like flop," you know, and fair enough. You know what I mean? Like if it's a huge brand like an H&M and they don't make things in a 6X or like whatever, that I think we put more flame under, because they got the money. But the thing is, I've started to now invest more capital in making sure I can at least go up to a 5X. Some of my more specialty garments, I can't go above like an extra large sometimes. But I'm, it's a work in progress, and it's just me with some of my own money and a credit card, and hoping for the best.
I mean, I think this could relate to like makeup, cosmetic, brand.
Yeah.
When they're big brand, they should create more shades, like foundations, right?
Yeah.
We're expecting more from that brand.
Yeah, I think it's like especially when small brands pop up, like really truly a small brand where they have one product line, and maybe that is foundation or tinted moisturizer or whatever, and then there's people in the comments like, well, you don't make literally the lightest shade, you don't make the darkest shade. And I know I'm very cynical in that way. I'm just like, well, would you like to give me the money to do that?
Close, right?
So I can take it to somewhere and go make it. Anyhow, but yeah.
Now that you found your inspiration to create the In Our label, how was your support system to, get this kick-started?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, for me, like, I very much march to the beat of my own drum, and maybe I should listen to other people more often, but I'm very much about, like, if I feel it in the moment and I want to do it, I'll just do it, and I have conviction to do it. And I think when I was beginning, some people were like, you know how to sew? You learned how to sew? I was like, yeah, I learned how to sew. And like, especially through my college, I think about where I went to college in the way that like we had a fashion design program that is pretty like critically acclaimed. And I think about the designers that graduated from those programs who are like either not working in fashion anymore or work in the same way I used to work, where it's like working in a corporate studio designing corporate items for corporate things. You know what I mean? Like not really designing and making things for yourself or making for a business. I always think about the imposter syndrome of that more rather than luckily my personal inner circle is all very supportive and like have always like
that's really important.
Yeah, in that way. So that's always been really lovely.
I also see in your website of your core value, the first one's the people, second is product, and the third one is purpose. Would you like to expand on that, on how you create those value?
Yeah, I mean, I think those for me, it's like those three. It's like, oh gosh, I mean, well, I know we're gonna get into like talking about SHEIN because I know that's coming up at some point. But
yes,
we'll talk about her. But so like for me, like how I think about those is like product is very much about like making things that just are fun and whimsical and people can wear any day of the week. It's also the thing is like product is also being transparent in the fact that it's like, yes, I use polyester materials. They're not entirely sustainable. They're usually not sustainable, or they're not usually eco-friendly. But I use them, and I try to be like as very upfront with people as I can about like, oh no, this is a polyester piece, and I am charging this much because it took X amount of time to make it.
Yeah, I mean it's understandable, especially you're a starter designer. So sorry, you're a starter designer, and you gotta make that moolah, and
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. And like, and the kind of other two, it's like people is like basically around the idea that, I mean, again, we'll talk about it. There's so much to talk about, but there's so much to dive into. But it's like people in the way that like there is someone making your clothing, like anything you're wearing right now. Someone was on a sewing machine attaching the arm to that chest, attaching the arm to the back, adding a neck hole, adding a waistband. And like I want people to understand like that clothing doesn't come from machines. Clothing doesn't come from a 3D printer. Clothing comes from a person with hands.
Of course.
And then lastly is the purpose, which is like about why I try to do what I do, and like and essentially like there has to be purpose around everything, because nothing can be left up to chance in that way of like, well, we could just like make 100 of these and like with one person, everything I do, I take a step to make a purpose about like why I choose a certain factory, why I choose a certain seamstress, why I choose certain materials, why I choose to collaborate with certain people.
Yeah.
That purpose like contains people.
So with your 3 core values, that is really, it's nice to have in a brand, to get to know the designer, the clothing, and what's the message behind it. You know what I mean? And it's not just like something just you pull out there and this is it. I made a white T-shirt with with a graphic on it and says hi.
People need to understand the hard labor, the behind the scene.
Yeah, I mean, there are people, in this country, especially in this country being USA, who literally, like, I mean, Mexican migrant workforces that sometimes work in sweatshop-like situations in LA that are making, like, very basic, whatever brand T-shirts to then be used to, like, for print on demand or whatever. And that's something that's, like, I think we just don't talk about enough about the fact that's, like, people make our stuff. It's like also people don't go to a restaurant and just assume they just put the food in a microwave or all the food.
Yes.
It's done. If someone's making the food, so it's like it's kind of a concept like, well, someone's also making like clothing.
Me and Nat actually spoke about this prior to your interview in regards about the SHEIN. And it's so interesting. I saw your video in regards about the influencers that goes to China and get interviewed, advocates saying this factory itself treats the workers good, and it's really clean. And I like how you and the other designers have said something and said, no, this is not real. This is not realistic.
Yeah, that video
with me for my last full day in China.
Hello. So this creator got a lot of flack for making a video basically promoting SHEIN's ethical business practices. And the original video got removed, but I did repost it to my account. If you see it on your For You page, you'll get some context. Basically, this creator made a video about how the fact that, when you are looking at SHEIN, you shouldn't take the rumors about how SHEIN is unethical, like they do everything by standard, blah, 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 blah. And which we know is a lie. We know that is to be a lie, that SHEIN exploits their workers and exploits the factories that they contract with. And as someone who works ethically in China to create their own pieces in their collection, it really just grinds my gears because it just takes out the humanism in the fact that someone is sitting down in a sewing machine and attaching an arm to a bodice. And so to give some context on how I work with a really great seamstress named May. I've worked with her since I started my partnership at my factory called Springdale Fashions Ltd. They took me on as a small brand, pay per production brand. It's a lot of money. But May gets paid a base rate per garment of 20 yuan, which is like $3 per garment. She also receives an hourly rate in USD, roughly to about $20 to $21 an hour. It's a high physical labor job. She is old. She takes time to make my garments, and I appreciate it. There's quality, there's craftsmanship. So when I saw this original video, I thought, shame on SHEIN for trying to use creators to front their propaganda, the fact that they are such an ethical company, which is not possible when you're spending $15 on a shirt, or not even $15, like what, $7 on a shirt? Just take the math that I have told you, right, about the 20 yuan per garment and then the base rate. Like, there's no way they would make money on a $7, $5 shirt. So someone is getting exploited. And I'm sorry, I don't want to laugh, but it's just like so funny when I see these videos come across my feed. And the thing is, ethical production in China is totally achievable. It's totally there. You gotta fork up the cash. And to anyone that's like, well, make stuff in America, make it USA, blah, blah, blah. The factories in the USA are maybe arguably worse because it usually uses migrant workforce to sew. Remember, there is someone always on the bench physically hand sewing garments. There are no machines. There's no AI. There is someone fully making an arm, putting it on a bodice, and sending it up to whoever needs it, wants it, is paying for it. Okay, that's everything I want to say. Have a great day. Bye, guys.
Oh gosh, I mean, I think this creator is still getting slammed, and I feel bad for this creator too in hindsight, because it's like she's just a pawn in Shein's like propaganda game, and unfortunately, if you notice that all of the like creators they brought were either black or plus size.
Yeah.
And because Shein thought, oh, people won't flame them on the internet because they are black or plus size. Like people won't even cross that line or boundary.
Yeah.
Like, call them liars. You know what I mean? Like because they know the social ethics of like calling out black creators or calling out plus size creators in the minority. But no. I think the power of Shein. No.
It sucks because like these influencers are just like they don't know what they're aiming for. You know what I mean? Like
they're PR crisis managers for Shein, and like it's great that it's great that it's like these minority creators. I mean, either we don't know their wealth background or like what they do money wise, but it's on the flip side, it's cool. You get a trip to go somewhere. It's all expenses paid. You get to go to and enjoy a different country, right? Like that's the fun travel. But when it's like, from what we've learned, that these creators were not paid to make these videos, or that was a part of their contracts or their stipulations to like make videos about being at their innovation center. Anywho, just from background too, for anyone who's listening, it's like Shein is if you don't know, Shein is a multi-billion-dollar corporation that makes very, very cheap fashion and can get it to you very, very quickly. They tried to basically be the rivals of like Amazon in fashion, essentially.
Or Forever 201, like all the fast fashion chain out there. Yes,
the fastest fashion chain, totally. And the thing is, you can go onto Shein and you can get a shirt for $3. You can go get pants for $5. You can get a dress for under $6. Like it's amazing. And some people will argue that, oh no, Shein is ethical, like look what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. But the prices do not lie in terms of like how much this thing costs. Though we are taking on the savings of like, oh my God, we're getting a shirt for $3. It's amazing. Someone in the chain is getting fully screwed over. And that person is probably the person who's making the garment, who actually has to sweat over the labor and like with their hands put it through the machine. I think the videos that came out of this Shein brand trip were entirely tone deaf, and I think these creators got what was coming to them. But the thing is, I think more than that, I think it's still putting fire back in Shein to be like, no, you guys are wrong. We're not going to be spreading that kind of propaganda about, oh, you guys treat your people so well. Oh, your fashion is so sustainable and eco-friendly. It's one of those things where I'm like, let's make sure that our voices are heard on TikTok, especially on TikTok too. Like, let's make sure they're very heard about why small creators like us, like fashion creators like us, we do what we do, and why things cost as much as they do. I mean, I get comments all the time on my TikToks about like certain things I make, like, oh, this thing shouldn't be worth $200. It should be only like $50.
Yeah,
that's how much it costs me to make it as a sample. To like to like hand them money, not even to sell the sample. But yeah, it's fun.
I think fellow other consumers out there and stuff, and depending on their socioeconomic background, having this knowledge of purchasing these items from this company, it just gives you like, oh, should I really support, or should I just start going to a company that's really supporting their unders, that's really 100%.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll give some background to or some breakdown too. It's like, so I work with a really great ethical factory in China called Springdale Fashions Ltd. in Jiangmen, China. And I work with one seamstress. Her name is May. She's in her like mid-60s now. And she's been working at this factory.
Shout out to May.
Somewhere. I hope good wishes, well wishes. But I mean, like, she makes all of my samples. She works on a couple of the different brands and contracts, and so whenever I get line time, I try to really utilize it. But basically, to think about the math, she gets paid like $20 to $21 an hour. That's her hourly rate. Then she gets paid 20 yuan per garment, which is roughly $3 a garment. So that is already $24
Per
or even
hour.
more. It could be literally, if she makes 3 garments an hour, she could essentially walk away with $9. Then she is making $29, $30 an hour. For me, I contract in a way the account manager that I work with will say, like, okay, it'll take 4 hours to do this, made to order garments that you need, or the same thing you need. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna walk away with having to pay, like, I guess what's the math on that? 90, about 120 area probably then for those 4 hours, paying 120 to like have things made and have things completed. And this is like a rougher take, right? So like when people basically are like advocating for SHEIN, I'm like, your math is not mathing. The math is not adding up here. Like we are people who understand geometry, I think. We understand calculus. And so,
Unfortunately.
yeah, unfortunately. And so, like, when people are, like, when you're getting a $3 t-shirt, it's basically you have to kind of work backwards, and that person who made that shirt is probably getting paid less than $1 an hour, or they're not even getting paid hourly, they're getting paid per garment. And sometimes they're only getting paid, like, a third of a penny per garment, or 3
I just want to add to your statement. It's just that on top of that, it just really, we don't know how, because like in America, we have rights as a worker, for our worker. We do have breaks and all of these things.
No.
However, we don't know what's behind those doors. Like, yeah, we do the calculation, but we don't know how humanly are they being treated in their, jobs.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it goes for any minority workforce too. I mean, I think about the LA factories and sweatshops here, and the fact that a lot of it is migrant workforce have to work under the table for like $1 an hour to like survive. I think the one takeaway too is for me is that's like always that though SHEIN makes China look bad in the way that like manufacturing happens, but on the flip side, there are really great factories that have been family owned or family run for years and years and years, who treat all of their workers great, who give their workers enough space, like physical space to work, breaks, air conditioning, the right to exercise, no forced labor, no child labor. I want to just shout out my factory really quick because they are very much about social responsibility, and the fact that the factory itself is like family and friends run. So one of their initiatives in 2013, like last 10 years ago, from what they put on their website, essentially, or what I've heard, is basically like, well, it's essentially like they were building schools for areas in China that otherwise would not have the access to education, and things like the friends of the founder or friends of friends who are like, oh, I grew up in this area, and this area needs a school, needs a library. But it costs a lot of money too. So it's like whatever they could do social responsibility wise is like that. It's like it's not all evil, which I think SHEIN unfortunately puts a bad rap on it. Puts a bad rap on the country. Of course, like I'm not advocating for China as a whole because, like, of course, duh. It's one of those things where even this country too. I don't think people could say like America's entirely a fabulous country, as we've learned. Sorry, we're getting political, but regardless, I know Matcha. Regardless, there are great people in the world who do work and do great things and want to help people and want to help creators like me.
Of course, to advocate that rights as well, to kind of like to give knowledge to some people who doesn't know the facts yet, which is really nice. And I wanted to know, because like maybe like other designers out there like you want to enter this designing, how would they search for a good factory that human rights and equally pay for them? We hope you enjoyed our episode of our podcast today.
Before you go, please make sure to follow us on Instagram, matchatalk_podcast.
Don't forget our TikTok account, it's Matcha Talks. All right. We hope to hear from you soon.
Bye.
Bye.